Our featured speaker tonight bills himself as a libertarian activist and political researcher from Christchurch, New Zealand. I love that name, Christchurch. It's so politically incorrect. I think the only thing that would make that town's name better is if they had a team named the Redskins. He's been blogging and researching the international left from New Zealand for many years. He's also the creator of a website called keywiki.org, which is an online encyclopedia of the United States left. In recent years, he's been regularly visiting the United States, speaking to more than 200 groups of Tea Partiers, conservatives, and Republicans in 30 states, talking to them about the infiltration of the hard left into and throughout the Democratic Party. He discusses how leftists have taken control of the agenda and now set public policy through their control of labor unions. You heard Jerry talk about his two books, Barack Obama and the Enemies Within, published in 2011, followed last year by Enemies Within, Communists, Socialists, and Progressives in the US Congress. In these books, he sounds the alarm on the danger posed to our freedom and our national strength by the American political left. He has said, people have been living in the richest, freest, most benevolent country in the world. When you're up like that, you think it's going to go on forever. But there's no law that guarantees that. Every great country has fallen. That's been the pattern of history. He adds, ominously, if America fails, the West goes down. But he also offers a message of hope based on the constitutional resurgence represented by the Tea Party movement. Right now, he said in a recent interview, this country is like Jimmy Carter on steroids, and you need Ronald Reagan on steroids to turn it around, to restore the Constitution to its rightful position and gut the federal government. From the other side of the world, this New Zealander understands better than most Americans what animates and motivates conservatives, what we're up against in the hardcore left, and what the stakes are if we lose. Please help me give a warm Conservative Forum welcome to Mr. Trevor Loudon.
Thanks very much, Joel, for the great intro. Can everybody hear me okay?
Oh, yeah.
Can you understand a real southern accent? Okay. Look, it's great to be here. It's a real honour. I know you've had some great speakers here, and this is a great turnout tonight. And I also know there's some great friends in the audience. I see Bob and Alan in the corner, and I see Elsie and Martin snuck in as well. They probably thought I didn't see them. But it's great to see all you guys. There's a lot of familiar faces here. Everybody always asks me, they say, well, I've been touring the country for 3 years now, spoken to groups all over this place. I normally come here on 90-day visas, but I'm very tempted to do 91 days because apparently I get a free cell phone. What a great country. Look, everybody always says, why do I care about America? So there are two basic reasons. I know there's some people in the audience who appreciate this. My country was saved in World War II because of the massive sacrifice of your fathers and uncles and grandfathers in the battles of Guadalcanal and the Coral Sea and Midway. And that memory is very strong in my country today. The other reason is more selfish, but it's related. Ronald Reagan had it right. This is the last best hope of mankind. If freedom should fail in the United States, if you lose your constitution, your liberty, your economic dynamism, and your military superiority, all of which are in grave danger, the bad guys of this planet are going to carve up the world amongst themselves. You can see what's happening now, folks. You look around this world right now, China is building a big blue water navy in the Pacific. Russia is obviously expanding its empire in Europe, or wants to. You've got Iran flexing its muscles in the Middle East. Most of Latin America is now under Marxist control. Most of Europe, most of Africa is under Chinese control. And Europe is living in fear right now. All your allies, folks, are freaking out because they look at what's happening in the world today and they look at the leadership coming out of your White House and they are worried, folks. And your allies are backing away. You saw what happened when your president called for support to go into Syria. All your allies were lining up, right? Couldn't wait to get on board, could they? And I'm not saying they should have, it was madness. But that shows where American prestige is going in the world right now. Vladimir Putin, the old KGB man, who spent most of his life trying to destroy your country, and as he says himself, there's no such thing as a former KGB man, is now regarded as more of a leader on the world stage than the so-called leader of the free world. That's causing big problems, folks. Your allies look at what your president did to Poland and Czechoslovakia. Took away their missile shield protecting them from the Russians. They saw him abandon Georgia to the Russians. And now they're looking at the Ukraine, folks. The Ukraine is fighting for its freedom right now. And the Russians are pumping out all this propaganda, calling their opposition fascists and Nazis, and Westerners are swallowing this garbage. But the world is looking at the Ukraine right now, and they're looking at America's response. The Ukraine has a written treaty signed in your Senate to protect them in the event of Russian military aggression. They gave up their nuclear arsenal in exchange for that promise. And now that they need it, where is America? What's Obama doing, folks?
Laughing.
Well, the other day he sent out, so far he's sent out $5 million of non-lethal aid and John Kerry. Which is more insulting, folks. The worst thing that John Kerry would ever do to the Russians is cut off their ketchup supplies. Obama has also put some sanctions on some rich Russians. That's supposed to terrify Putin. Yeah. I saw a sign at a big rally in Moscow the other day, of downtown Moscow, a big pro-Putin rally. I thought it summed up Russia's attitude very well. The sign said this: your porn is harder than your sanctions. So people, your president, who has been mentored by pro-Soviet Marxists his entire life, has an agenda. And his agenda is to destroy your military. He was mentored by Frank Marshall Davis, the Hawaiian communist, by Alice Palmer in Chicago, a bona fide Soviet collaborator, Quentin Young and others, all pro-Soviet Marxists. And their agenda was always to destroy the American military, because they knew if they could take out your military, their friends in Russia and China would rule this planet. And what has your president done, folks? Which sector of your economy has taken all the cuts? The military has taken all of it, folks. He's gutted whole weapon systems. He's cutting your Navy down to pre-World War II levels. He's driving good officers out of the ranks with the gay policy and women in combat. If Obama was a fully paid up Russian agent out to destroy your military, what would he be doing differently than he is today, folks?
Nothing.
And if you think your enemies aren't willing to take you out, I'll just give you a little scenario. This is a Russian-Chinese plan for taking America out by war if necessary. It was formulated many years ago. It was revealed in 1998 by a defecting Russian, Stanislav Lunev, the former deputy head of Russian military intelligence in your country. Way after the fall of the wall, folks. This is how he said they would do it if it comes to war. Russia has a very unreliable army. Too many drunks and too many Muslims. But they've got a huge number of nuclear weapons, at least 6,000 that we know about, probably many, many more. The Chinese don't have many nukes, but they have a whole lot of young men they don't need. They've been aborting baby girls for many years, folks. They have 20 or 30 million young men who will never marry. That's a big social problem ticking away right now. So the plan is this: if it comes to war, and they thought they could win this 15 years ago, Russia will nuke the continental United States. Rain of fire on the continent. They will then invade Alaska and parts of Canada, but stop at the border. The Chinese then come across the Pacific and wave after wave after wave. They know they'll lose 10, 20, 30 million men, but that's cool. That solves the problem for them. They then get a foothold and they invade what's left of the continental United States. Meanwhile, the Nicaraguans and Cubans and Venezuelans and probably the Mexicans are invited into the southern United States for looting rights, to carve up and take away anything they can. That is a functioning operational plan right now, people. And that doesn't count EMP weapons. We know that the Iranians and North Koreans are testing those right now. 6 nuclear bombs fired into your upper atmosphere would fry the entire electrical grid in your country for months and years. Your own government has said that if this ever happens, and there's very little to stop it, 80% of Americans will be dead within a year. That's your own government saying that, folks. How much more serious does it need to get? The most significant thing your president said in his entire first term of office, when he was caught off mic in South Korea with then Russian President Dmitry Medvedev. Yes, Mr. Medvedev, when I get re-elected, I'll have more flexibility to deal with you. Yes, said Medvedev, I understand. I will pass your message on to Vladimir. We are with you. How much more of a warning do you need, America? This isn't about a depression, folks. This isn't about losing some of your rights. This is about losing your country forever. And if your country goes down, folks, every Western country follows. Every one, including mine. Now, my books, I've got 2 of them here. The first one was Barack Obama and the Enemies Within. It's nearly 700 pages, folks, all about Obama's Marxist, communist, pro-Soviet ties. And to be honest, people, that's really, really heavy. And I got bloody sick of lugging that around the country, I can tell you. And I vowed and declared that my next book would be smaller and lighter. And this one is The Enemies Within, Communists, Socialists and Progressives in the US Congress. And guess what? It's bigger. Because the deeper I dug, folks, the more I found. And I couldn't leave out Barbara Lee, could I? Or Nancy Pelosi, or Mark Takano, or George Miller, or Judy Chu, or
Harry Reid.
Harry Reid. No, I haven't actually got Harry Reid, to be honest. But I got about 20 from California in there. You'll be surprised to learn that. Because your state is the microcosm for the rest of the country. The books are really about the 2 big secrets of modern communism. The first secret, I think they borrowed from the devil. Because we all know that the cleverest thing the devil ever did was to convince people he doesn't exist. What have the communists done in the last 20 years, folks? They don't exist, right? Or if they do, they're no longer a threat, are they? And who mainly tells you this? Mainly the communists. The other big thing the book is about, the really big secret of modern communism, hardly ever discussed in the thousands of books on the subject. It is the ability of a tiny Marxist-Leninist party to influence and even control the legislative process in their country. In other words, to write the laws. Now, so what I'm saying is less than 20,000 card-carrying communists in your country are basically writing the laws that control the lives of more than 300 million Americans. Very, very far-fetched, isn't it? Very small tail wagging a very big dog. Well, a mechanism they use in this country is the labour unions. Control of the labour unions. You might say, oh, big deal, 11, 12% of the workforce. But how many Democrats at any level in this country, elected officials, do not owe their job to the labour unions? Can you name one? So if a union guy gets you your job in Congress and comes to you and says promote this policy or else you don't get any support ever again, what are you going to do, folks? Do what you're damn well told, right? The process is simple. The Marxists set a policy. It might be socialisation of student loans, or Obamacare, or comprehensive, or a New START treaty with Russia, or normalisation of relations with Cuba, or socialisation of student loans. They set a policy. They make it union policy, and the unions make it Democrat policy. There's not a policy in today's Democratic Party that cannot be traced back to the Communist Party USA or Democratic Socialists of America. You're very lucky, folks, because up until 1995, your unions were controlled by hardcore anti-communists like Lane Kirkland and George Meany. But in 1995, there was a coup, folks. That was the year that Democratic Socialists of America took over the unions. They installed their member John Sweeney in as president, and from that vantage point, they took over the Democratic Party. They purged all the moderates like Joe Lieberman, and now they own that party, lock, stock and barrel, folks. The Democrats are owned by the unions, and the unions are owned by the Marxists. Now, there's a whole bunch of policies described in my book that emanate from that, but I'm going to talk about one tonight, which should resonate here in California. Comprehensive immigration reform, otherwise known as amnesty. Now people, you have Republicans telling you this is going to be good for the GOP, that they're hell-bent on passing it. Because if you give 12 or 20 or 40 million illegal immigrants citizenship and voting rights, they're all going to be so grateful, people, they're all going to become good little Republicans, right? How delusional can you be, folks? How delusional. So why do Republicans tell you this? Could it be connected in any way to the fact that the US Chamber of Commerce has spent more than $1.7 billion promoting amnesty in the last 10 years? 1.7 million, folks. Billion. What do you think the Chamber wants out of it, people? Cheap labour. To pluck their chickens and staff their factories. Because to the Chamber of Commerce, your border security or your national integrity or the laws of your land come a very close second, a very distant second to their profits. What do you think of that argument, folks? Very patriotic, right? But the real driver of this is the hard left. This started out in this state in Los Angeles in the 1950s. Communist Party member named Bert Corona, also a Democrat, he set up the Viva Kennedy Clubs, the first organised effort to bring Latinos into the Democratic Party. He also, because they had to get the Latinos, folks, because they were conservative, they couldn't let them go to the Republicans. He also set up on party instructions a whole bunch of support groups for illegal immigrants across the Southwest and Southern California. And these groups were there to encourage illegals across the border, get them into factories and farms, get them settled, get them citizenship and voting. The voting was the key. Corona trained a whole bunch of disciples to carry on his work. 3 of them are very active in this state today, work very closely together, all Marxists. The first one is Antonio Villagrosa, until recently the mayor of Los Angeles. He turned Los Angeles into a sanctuary city. He forbade the LAPD from enforcing immigration laws, and the illegals flooded in, folks. Changed the entire demographics of this state. Second member of this group, Gil Cedillo, a Communist Party supporter, until recently the head of the California State Senate. Big-time immigration activist. He got the DREAM Act pushed through in California a couple of years ago, which gave all sorts of so-called rights to the children of undocumented workers. Third member of this group, the most powerful woman in your state and a hardcore Marxist, Maria Elena Durazzo, the head of the California AFL-CIO. She is the woman behind the massive union-driven and paid-for Latino voter registration drives and get out the vote efforts that have added hundreds of thousands of Latino voters to the California rolls in the last 15 years, almost all of them Democrats. The work of these people and their allies has turned California from a reddish-purplish state to a solidly blue state, folks. A deliberate program organised by the Communist Party USA and Democratic Socialists of America. The man driving this in the country today is a man called Eliseo Medina, long-time colleague of Durazzo's. He was until recently the Executive Vice President of the SEIU Union, the largest private sector union in your country and the one with the biggest Latino membership. He's a member of Democratic Socialists of America, a supporter of the Communist Party USA, a former member of Obama's Latino Advisory Committee, and was personally consulted by Obama before the latest push for amnesty. Medina was the man who got the bill pushed through your Senate, and he's been using his union colleagues all over this country over the last few months to rally outside the offices of Republican congressmen to get them to flip their vote on amnesty to get a bill through the House. He is the leader of this movement, folks. He works very closely with Raul Grijalva, the Communist Party allied Democrat from Arizona, and very closely with Luis Gutierrez, the rep from Illinois, who is driving this in the House of Representatives. Gutierrez is a former member of the pro-Cuban Marxist-Leninist Puerto Rican Socialist Party. Now, any union members in the room, or former union members? I know there'll be one or two. Okay. Which organisation in this country, folks, 20 years ago, which organisation in this country was leading the charge against illegal immigration? The AFL-CIO people. They were constantly lobbying Congress to increase penalties on any employer caught employing illegal immigrants, because they saw, quite correctly, that illegal immigrants were unfair competition for union members and would drive wages and conditions out the bottom and cost jobs. So in 2014, which organisation is leading the charge to legalise illegal immigrants? The unions. So why was it bad for union members 20 years ago and good for union members today? In fact, it isn't, ma'am. But the difference is this. Before 1995, the unions were there to represent the interests of their members. After 1995, when they were taken over by Democratic Socialists of America and the Communist Party USA, they became there to promote socialist revolution. Illegal immigrants are real bad for union workers, folks, but they're great for socialist revolution. The unions are deliberately selling out their own membership right now, taking their money and selling their jobs down the river because a revolution comes first, folks. And it is not easy to get union members to vote against their own interests. It took Eliseo Medina 5 years of hardcore lobbying to get them to flip their policy from anti-illegal immigration to pro-illegal immigrants at their big convention in Louisiana in 2000. The Marxists did it, folks. Got to give him credit for that. So why does Medina want this, people? What's in it for him? Why is this his life's work? He let the cat out of the bag at a big progressive conference in Washington, D.C. 3 years ago. I've got him on tape. I quote him in my book. He got in front of the comrades and said this: passing an immigration bill is the #1 priority of the progressive movement. We have to get citizenship and voting rights for our 11 million undocumented workers. And did he talk about compassion, or reuniting families, or giving immigrants a break, or the American dream? Not a single bloody word, folks. All he said was this. In 2008, Latinos voted overwhelmingly for Obama and progressive candidates. If we stand by these people and get them citizenship and voting rights, they will stand by our movement. That will give us at least 8 million more Democratic Party votes. That will give us a governing majority, not just for the next few election cycles, but for the foreseeable future. In other words, forever, folks. Because think about this. If they get amnesty and citizenship for those people, get 8, 10, 12 million more votes, what was the last election decided on, people? 2 million, 2.5 million? 8 million more Democratic Party votes, folks. The first thing that happens is that Texas goes blue. And you take the Electoral College votes from Texas, your second most populous state, and add them to the Electoral College votes of California, your most populous state, which they've already got through immigration. Add the totals together, folks. Do the math. It is almost completely impossible for the Republicans to ever elect another president. Ever. One-party state, folks. And if you think the Democrats are arrogant now, you imagine what they'd be like with 8 million more votes in their pockets and the Republicans permanently out of office. Wouldn't be just the IRS they send after you. This country won't be like France or Germany, folks. It'll be like Venezuela very quickly and Cuba not long after, because that is the plan. And you have Republicans, folks, telling you this is good for the GOP. These are not stupid people telling you this. They can add up numbers. I bet you they know how much is in their bank account. Yet they are willing to push this, knowing this is suicide, not just for their party, but for their country. What do you call that, folks? They know what they're doing, folks. And David Bratt made that issue a very important issue in his race against Eric Cantor, and Mr. Cantor got exactly what he deserved for it, folks.
Yes.
And you have the power to make a whole lot more of them suffer for it too.
Yes.
Now, the other thing my book is about is the individuals, because I think these people should be held accountable for what they're deliberately doing to your country, folks. The book profiles 51 members of the House and 14 senators. Now, anybody in this room, and I know there'll be some, ever applied for a federal government job who's willing to admit it? Okay, a few of you. Did you need an FBI security clearance for your positions? You did. Look, I know they can go through your underwear drawers, folks. Check out your family background, overseas travel, your education, your friends, drug habits, the whole lot. I had a friend who applied for a federal government job 2 years ago. The FBI drove to Canada to interview his communist uncle, and on the strength of that, he was denied that position. And fair enough. You're in the heart of the federal government, folks. That's the heart of the free world. You have enemies, people, who want to exploit your weaknesses. They need to trust federal employees. You might have state secrets under your control one day. You might have the ability to influence public policy. You might be guarding the president. They need to trust you. But what if you're a young Marxist radical like Barbara Lee or Maxine Waters or Raul Grijalva or Danny Davis or Jan Schakowsky or Jerry Nadler or Eddie Bernice Johnson, and you hang around with the local Communist Party and they control the unions and the Democratic Party, and they have the ability to elect you to Congress or the Senate. And there you can serve on the Homeland Security Committee, or the Science and Technology Committee, or the Armed Services Committee, or even the Intelligence Committee, and have access to all sorts of government secrets and the ability to influence public policies in all sorts of strange directions. How much of an FBI security check do you need for that one, folks? Zero. Because the people are supposed to vet the candidates, right? And the media is supposed to help you do it, right? Can you see the problem with that? What if the media is on the wrong side, folks? What happens then? People, think of John Conyers. John Conyers led the Judiciary Committee for many years, the body that writes your laws, the body that oversees the Federal Bureau of Investigation and grants their budget. John Conyers has a 50-year history with the Communist Party USA, folks. 40 years with Democratic Socialists of America, and long-time links with the Workers' World Party, a pro-North Korean, pro-Iranian outfit. He is the man who decides how much money the FBI gets every year, or helps to. Do you think the FBI is ever going to investigate John Conyers or his friends? Charlie Rangel, on the Ways and Means Committee, the body that writes your tax laws, folks, doesn't obey them, but he writes them. 50-year history with the Communist Party USA, long-time member of at least 2 Soviet fronts that I know of, invited Fidel Castro to Harlem in 1995. A few more examples. Barbara Lee, 40 years with the Communist Party. Nancy Pelosi, not much less. Maxine Waters, at least 40 years. Patty Murray, the senator from Washington State, long time history with the Communist Party. Tammy Baldwin, the freshman senator from Wisconsin, long time member of a support group for the Colombian narco-terrorists, Marxist-Leninist terrorists, has used her position in your Senate and your Congress on many occasions to try and get US military aid cut off to the Colombian government. If she ever succeeds, Colombia goes communist, and those guerrillas can send even more cocaine to your country, folks. Judy Chu out of California. Looks like butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. Lovely looking Chinese lady down the LA way. On Obama's re-election committee, head of the Progressive Caucus, head of the Asia Pacific Caucus, the bodies, the 2 most left-wing bodies in your Congress, along with the Black Caucus, all set up by the Communist Party and Democratic Socialists of America. Goes to China on a regular basis to build business ties between China and California. When she's in China, she tells the Chinese press, "I am coming home." The Chinese press has described her as China's representative in your Congress. Greensboro, North Carolina, folks, 1979. The Communist Workers' Party, a hardcore Maoist nutcase outfit, total fanatics, got in a street gun battle with the KKK. Broad daylight in Greensboro, folks. Automatic weapons were used and 5 people died. Look it up, the Greensboro Massacre. Pretty extreme, don't you think? Judy Chu used to head one of the Communist Workers' Party's main front groups. Long time association with that group. Still works with at least 5 former leaders of the Communist Workers' Party right today. One of them is Jean Quan, the Mayor of Oakland. Another one is Ken Wong, who helped her to set up the Asia Pacific Caucus in your Congress. You have members of the Congressional Black Caucus who go down to Cuba on a regular basis to confer with the Castro brothers about how they're going to work to change US foreign policy so that the Cubans to ease trade and travel restrictions on Cuba, so they can send basically more spies and terrorists to your country. What do you call it, folks, when someone goes from your country to an enemy foreign country to help them against you? Is that a serious offence, folks? This has been going on for a long time, people. This is happening all the time, every day. You think back to the Vietnam War, guys. Any Vietnam veterans in the room? Thank you, I knew there'd be several. Now this is my take, gentlemen. Did you lose that war in the jungles of Vietnam? No. Were you handicapped and hamstrung in all your activities? Couldn't bomb this, couldn't chase the enemy there? All these sort of crazy rules of engagement. Is that true? A bit like Afghanistan now, right? Maybe even worse. And when you withdrew, the South Vietnamese government had all military aid cut off, and communist victory was inevitable. 55,000 Americans died. People, 56 maybe, I'm not sure. I know it's a lot. And why did you lose, folks? Because you had congressmen in your Congress putting crazy rules of engagement on you and working to defund the South Vietnamese government. And a lot of those congressmen were working very closely with the Communist Party USA, which was controlled by the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, which was allied to the Communist Party of Vietnam, North Vietnam. You think there might have been a little bit of treason going on there, folks? Those congressmen, folks, deliberately sold out your troops in the field to the benefit of your enemies. And how many of them ever suffered a single penalty for what they did, folks? John Conyers is still in Congress. John Kerry is Secretary of State. There's at least 100 members of your House and 20 members of your Senate who wouldn't get a basic security clearance to clean the toilets at any military base in your country. And neither would your President. I think that could be a problem, folks. You think your enemies in Cuba and Iran and Russia and China aren't taking advantage of that right now. But I don't want to depress you people with any of that and bring you down. Am I a little bit late? Sorry about that, guys. Look, this is how I see it, people. If I thought there was no hope for America, I'd be back in my beautiful New Zealand right now, building bunkers and stocking up on baked beans. And I'm not mocking prepping, believe me. But this is how I see it. 2008, the left thought they had a slam dunk, folks. They had the House, they had the Senate, and they had their man in the White House. And their agenda was all written out, folks, and they were going to steamroll Middle America out of existence once and for all. They had it in the bag, people. 40 years of hardcore infiltration through the unions, the media, peace movement, the universities. 40 years was all coming to fruition, folks. And who was going to stand in their way? John Boehner? But in 2009 and 2010, something miraculous happened. And I don't use that word lightly. Tea Party, folks. 9/12. They came out of nowhere, folks. Where were they? Out of left field. Or should I say right field, perhaps? And they snuck up on the left, people. They blogged and they marched and they emailed and they agitated and they rallied and they phone banged and they put some spine into the GOP and they took back the House in 2010. And that brought the agenda of the left to a grinding, screeching halt, folks.
Thank you.
People, they had it in the bag. They were breaking out the vodka and a bunch of amateurs and novices snuck up on them and took their toys away. And some of you guys wonder why they call you dirty names. Why they hate you. Why do they hate us? Because you took their toys away, folks. They had it and you saved America. Because had you people not done what you did, the entire agenda of the left would be in now. Card check, cap and trade, green jobs, Obamacare would all be locked in. And 10, 12, 14 million illegals would be voting this year, folks. And where the hell would you be then? The Tea Party saved America, folks. It really did. And it's going to do even more. Because it also did something very important. It kick-started the Second American Revolution. I've spoken in 39 of the 57 states, folks. Just sing if you're awake. People all over. There are millions of people now who actually read the Constitution and understand the Constitution and are fighting for the Constitution. 5 years ago, folks, that was a phone box movement. Right now, it's everywhere. And that's huge, people. Now I'm going to do something that's normally considered very rude, but I'm a Kiwi and I can go home, right? Because you don't go to someone else's country, right, and tell them how to do things. It's very, very rude. But I see a movement, 5 years in, Tea Party conservative groups, 5 years of hard graft, hard, thankless work to turn this country around. And I get people saying to me, what do we do next? Are we making a difference? Should we persevere? Should I play more golf? You know, all these questions I hear all the time. Well, this is how I see it, folks. And my only value to you is as an outside observer. Because you can often see your neighbour's problems better than you can see your own. Right now, you have 50, 100 years of progressivism to unravel. Might take you 20, 30 years, I don't know. But you've got two huge battles coming up, folks. You've got 2014 and 2016. And you have to win. Because if you lose and they get their 8 or 10 or 12 more million legal votes, whatever you do after that may not count for much, folks. But how are you going to win, people? Well, I'll go back a little bit. 1976, your country had been losing your liberty, Republican, Democrat for decades. Now, people were pretty damn sick of it, right? They had nowhere to go. Until that year, a man came out of this state and he didn't talk about gross national product figures and all the things Republican thinks turn people on. He talked about a shining city on the hill and peace through strength and the Constitution and liberty. And thousands and hundreds of thousands of people loved Ronald Reagan's message, folks, and they rallied behind him. And they pushed and pushed and pushed to get him that Republican nomination in '76. And what did the Republican old guard do, folks? The Rockefeller Republicans, the John Boehners of the day. They hated him, people. They sabotaged him. They did everything they could to stop him. Ronald Reagan was banned from Ohio that year by the Ohio State GOP, folks. And they beat him. They gave the nomination to Gerald Ford, and Ford went up against Jimmy Carter, and Carter won. How did the Carter years work out for you guys? Interest rates up to here, gas queues round the corner, Panama, Iran. Your second worst ever president, people. Still suffering from him. But the important thing is this, the grassroots, the people just like you, did not give up. They got into that GOP, took over the precinct positions, the township committees, and they prepared the way for 1980. And this time, they were not going to take no for an answer. This time, when Reagan ran again, they got behind him and they forced the GOP to give them their candidate. He got the nomination, people. He went up against Carter and he took the country in a landslide. People, the hostages were back the first day. The interest rates went down, the taxes went down, the economy boomed. He rebuilt your military, he rebuilt your pride in your country, and he took out the Soviets without firing a shot. Any greater president in the 20th century, folks? No. And why did you have a Reagan revolution? Because people just like you stuck it to the GOP old guard and you chose the candidate. Is there a message for today? Well, right now, people, this country is Jimmy Carter on steroids. And you need Ronald Reagan on meth to turn this around, folks. Not just to go where Reagan did, to go way beyond Reagan, to actually gut the federal government and restore the Constitution. How are you going to do it, folks? Because Reagan was a genius. He could unite the social conservatives, the fiscal conservatives, and the defence conservatives. He got them all singing off the same song sheet. Right now, people, your base is very fractured. You got a million libertarians who gave their vote to Gary Johnson last time. You got social conservatives, Tea Party folk. You got moderate Republicans. You got fiscal conservatives. You got 2 million Republicans who stayed home last time. And you got several million evangelical Christians who aren't even registered to vote. Can you afford to lose any element of your base if you want to win the next few elections and make them worth a damn? Because you got vote for it against you now, folks. You got the illegals flooding across the border. You got the media against you. You got unions and dirty tricks. Can you ignore any element of your base? But guess what, people? This might surprise you. Some of those elements don't like each other very much. They fight. So how are you going to get them together? See, the thing is this. If the Republican old guard wins and they give you a Jeb Bush, that ain't going to unite the base, folks. That ain't going to inspire the base, and you're almost certainly going to lose. And even if you fluke a win, old Common Core, illegal immigration is an act of love, Jeb Bush, it's just going to roll progressivism on a little bit slower. But if you have a real fighter, someone who's prepared to put up his fist for the Constitution and fight for your country, maybe someone like a Ted Cruz, things could be very different. I'm not going to pick your leaders, folks, but this is what I would do if I was a man like Ted Cruz. I'd want to get that Reagan coalition together now, way before the primaries, way before Jeb Bush can get up ahead of steam. And I know this, all those groups are disunited, but they all want something. Every one of them has a pet issue that motivates them. So this is what I would do if I was Ted Cruz. I'd go to all these groups right now and do this. I'm running, and I'm running early. And the very first thing I'm going to do is name Alan West as my VP candidate. And for you libertarians, I want your votes. I'm going to make Rand Paul the Secretary of the Treasury, and he can do what he damn well wants to the Federal Reserve and the IRS. Sarah Palin, Secretary of Energy. Drill in your backyard if you want to. $1 a gallon gas for every American family. Scott Walker, Secretary of Labour, right to work in every state. Herman Cain, Secretary of Commerce. Deregulate. OSHA gone, EPA gone. Get American businesses working and employing again. John Bolton, Secretary of State. Tell your enemies where to get off, rebuild your alliances. Very important. Ambassador to the United Nations. No one. Dr. Ben Carson, Secretary of Health and Human Services. End the welfare culture in this country. Attorney General Trey Gowdy. End the vote fraud, restore the rule of law. And for those Christians who don't care about politics, those millions of Christians, but they do care about the state getting into their kids' heads, I would say to them, vote for me. We'll get rid of Common Core. We'll protect homeschooling because David Martin will be Secretary of Education. Name your whole cabinet early, folks. Run as a team. Have those people campaigning together in groups across this country. Would that unify the base? Yeah. Would you get out of bed every day and door knock to get those people elected, folks? Yeah. Would that inspire you? Because everybody's getting something, right? Everybody's getting someone to inspire them. And what would the media do with that, folks? Because right now you put your eggs in one basket, people, and they can beat up a Mitt Romney or a Sarah Palin. You try beating up 20 Rottweilers who are all campaigning together, backing each other up, and don't take any crap from anyone. There's a precedent for this, people. Reagan named his cabinet in '76, but there's an even better precedent. You didn't have a founding father, guys. You didn't just have George Washington. You had founding fathers. You had George Washington and Samuel Adams and Patrick Henry and Benjamin Franklin and James Madison. You had a whole team to lead that revolution, folks. And they had their egos, and they had their competing agendas, but they put them aside for the good of the country and the good of the revolution. And what did they give you, folks? Look at what they gave you. You have never had a bigger base, people. There's more constitutionalists and patriots and libertarians and real conservatives in this country than there's ever been. Far more than Reagan had. You put the base together with a team of leaders like that, who would stand in your way? You can take back your country, folks. So what I'm asking for from you guys is 2.5 more years at least of the hardest work you have ever done. You've had 5 years, 6, 7 years at this, people. Hard, thankless work. But 2.5 years is going to decide the fate of not just your country, but my country. Not just your children, but my children. You know what's going to happen if you do nothing, folks. And if you give it 2.5 years, I cannot guarantee you success, but the very least I can guarantee you is the right to look your children in the eye and say, I did everything I could. What is that worth to you guys? And if you win, and you can win, you'll give your children not just the great country you inherited, but one even greater. Is that worth fighting for? Yeah. Is it in you? So I want you to wrap up. I just want you to get some perspective, because I'm asking for a lot of sacrifice, folks. I'm asking for time away from your children and grandchildren. I'm away from mine 6 months a year, folks. But think of this. You've got to give up your hobbies. You've got to give up your time. You've got to fight for your country. I was in Morristown, New Jersey last year. I saw the encampment where 10,000 of your troops spent the winter of 1780. And that winter made this one look like Hawaii, people. That was a little ice age. 10,000 troops started that winter. Death, desertion and disease took 4,000 of them. The troops weren't paid for months. They were stealing every chicken they could find. The farmers hated them. The troops were boiling up their own boots to eat the leather. Their officers were eating their pet dogs to survive. Yet they went through that winter. They went through Valley Forge. They went through 7 or 8 winters, dodging British bullets and eating berries in the snow, folks, away from their families for years at a time. And often they'd come back to their farm and find it burnt to the ground. They were lost virtually every battle, folks. They were chased across every state. Every year, the armies were getting smaller and smaller. And people remember, 3% fought in that war, 10% supported it, 40% supported the British, and the rest didn't give a damn. Familiar to you guys? It's always the minority. Get a bunch of farmers and lawyers and blacksmiths and fishermen, and I gotta say pastors, Bible in one hand, long rifle in the other, took on the greatest military empire the world had ever seen, and they bloody well beat them. How miraculous is that, folks? George Washington understood how miraculous his victory was. You don't have to be religious to understand how miraculous that victory was, people. Do any of you people think the age of miracles is gone?
No.
Do you think if you stand up for your country and fight for your country and your constitution, do you think you will be abandoned? Do you think you'll be forsaken?
No.
But you have to stand up. You have to stand up and fight as you are fighting now. So I just want to say to you people, thank you so much for what you're doing for your country and for my country and for liberty. God bless America and God bless the Conservative Forum. Thank you. I'm just going to take a few questions. Just want to say and add a little thing too. Thank you is the first thing. I'm working with some guys right now, some of the same people who worked on 2016 in America to make a movie out of my latest book. We're going to be doing crowdsourcing funding, investor funding, etc. If anybody wants to know about that, just put their email address on that little paper thing I've got next to my books. I'd appreciate that. We're launching that very soon. But questions?
Yeah, so those of you who are regulars here, you know the drill. We've got ushers coming up and down the aisles. Can you hear me?
Yeah, so you've got to come and talk to Joel and hand the questions to him.
We've got ushers with the index cards coming up and down the aisles. So get yourself a blank index card, write down your question. Legibly, please. Take mercy on me, I got to read them. Okay, first question for you. Do you ever talk on American college campuses? If so, how is your message received?
No, look, to date I haven't. I'm very keen to get some invitations. I have talked to some younger groups, but I'd love to get into the campuses. I've people working on that for me now, but any campus invitation I'm happy to take up. I don't care what the audience is, conservative, liberal, whatever, I'll take it on.
Can we on the right use any of the tactics of the left to infiltrate and control institutions the way they have?
Well, I think it's not so much, yeah, look, the left has taken over the institutions, but it's a little bit like if you leave a garbage heap in your backyard, the rats are going to come, right? If you want to get rid of the rats, you don't set up another garbage pile, you actually get rid of the garbage heap. You have to get rid of a whole bunch of these government departments. You have to defund, take the unions, stop the special deals for the unions. You have to stop funding a lot of these crazy campus things that are going on. You have to get rid of the United Nations. You have to get rid of the IMF, the World Bank, all these things that are dragging you down. You actually have to get rid of them. I think the most productive use of anyone's time is to get into the GOP and take that over and return it to its real roots. Actually, living up to its own platform. Because there is no substitute for executive power and winning elections. There is no substitute for that.
Last week, the New York Post reported that Obama would be supporting Elizabeth Warren in 2016. What can you tell us about her communist associations?
Yeah, look, I'm not surprised. I know Elizabeth's going to stand. She has long-term connections to Democratic Socialists of America. I've got a whole chapter about her in my book. I've got several pictures of her with Marxists. She also backed by the Council for a Livable World, which was set up by a Soviet spy to destroy your military. Let's see about Elizabeth. Yeah, there's about 10 pages in my book all about her. Very close to Democratic Socialists of America. She is effectively a Marxist, and it doesn't surprise me at all that Obama's backing her, because he was also backed by Democratic Socialists of America. She's his natural successor.
What do you say to those who claim the Tea Party is racist and will not help minorities?
Well, the first rule of politics is of the left is to demonize your enemy. Now, you see this happening in Ukraine right now. Everybody knows that the Ukrainians are all fascists and Nazis, right? Who tells you this? The KGB tells you this. Basically, that is the tool they use to discredit you. I've been to 300 Tea Party groups. I've met black Tea Partiers, gay Tea Partiers, Chinese Tea Partiers. Every ethnic group I can think of has been involved. I've met one racist in the whole time I was there, and he wasn't even a Tea Party member. So basically I say, I don't even take that charge on board. If you get accused of being racist, you look them in the eye and say, you're making that because you've got no better argument. That is a straight out lie and you know it, and you should back off from that statement. Don't defend it, because you don't need to defend it. You're here for every American. Every American is going to benefit by what you do. Every argument the Tea Party has had with the Democrats or the mainstream Republicans, every single argument, the Tea Party's been on the right side of it.
You've inspired at least one person here. When are you switching your citizenship so you...
You think Obama would give me a green card? Seriously? I'm always going to be a Kiwi, folks. I'm a proud Kiwi. Over the border. But I would like to I do spend a lot of time here. If I get rich, I'm going to have a house here and a house there. That would be ideal.
Speaking of which, how are you treated in your own country?
A bit like you guys are treated here. Look, I'm regarded as pretty extreme, pretty up there, and you've got to realise New Zealand politics is 3 notches to the left of yours. We have very few gun rights, we have no written constitution, we have one House of Parliament. Our Conservatives would fit inside your Democratic Party, our Liberals would fit inside your Communist Party, and our Green Party would fit inside the Palestine Liberation Organisation.
Alright, I've got at least 4 cards here begging you to go talk to Ted Cruz. No question there, just want to let you know that.
Ted Cruz has used elements of my speeches in his speeches. Delegations have gone to him talking about this. Look, I know he has seen this. I've heard him take direct quotes from my speech in his speeches. So he's listening. And I hope he does something with it. But what we're trying to do, we've got websites out there, Facebook pages, trying to create a buzz around this, trying to make it a grassroots thing, so the debate is not whether he does run with the team, but who goes on it. So it's happening now. And there's a Ted Run petition out there. He wants to get 1 million signatures, and then he'll announce his candidacy. So the quicker you can get that together, the better.
Can you talk about any communists or Marxists or hardcore left that have infiltrated the Republican Party, if any?
Well, Dick Lugar, well, was going to be in my book, but the Tea Party got rid of him in Indiana. He was certainly one. He wasn't a progressive, he's far left, way left. It was more of a problem in the old days, like people like Jacob Javits, for instance. He had communist roots, senator from New York. They used to infiltrate the Republicans equally, largely the blacks. Frank Marshall Davis was a Republican once. Because in those days it was the party of Lincoln, so the black communists used to become Democrats. But it's not so much in recent times, because the Republicans have largely broken their links to the unions, and the unions are the main way this is done. So you've got progressives in the Republican Party, but not many communists that I can identify, though I'd love to. I'm sure there are a few in there.
How do you know that the people you mentioned are members of the Communist Party?
There's very few people in my book I would say are members of the Communist Party. Danny Davis, Jan Schakowsky and Jerry Nadler have all been card-carrying members of Democratic Socialists of America while serving in your Congress, and I get that out of their publications where they name them. You know, I've got the 700 pages there. I've gone through libraries all over your country, culling out documents from Communist Party archives, etc. I name the names because the communists name the names. You know, I can show Barbara Lee sponsoring communist events. I can show Maxine Waters sponsoring communist events. I've got Raul Grijalva's signature writing articles for the Communist Party newspaper. I've got photographs of Rosa DeLauro hugging Joel Fishman, the head of the Connecticut Communist Party. I've got the documentary evidence. I don't say they're members, I say they're sympathetic and they work with them.
Which do you think is worse, a Marxist president or a population who will elect him twice?
Say that again, I didn't hear the last one, sorry.
Which do you think is worse, a Marxist president or a population who will elect him twice?
Oh, I see. Yeah, well, you get the government you deserve, but, you know, people have to, you know, look, Americans live in the freest, richest, most prosperous society in the world. And Americans are the most benevolent people in the world. They're the kindest people, but they're also some of the naivest. Because I don't have to explain to Cubans or Czechs or Ukrainians or Poles what is happening in America. They've seen it. They said, but Americans are just so nice and so kind, they cannot conceive this. So they've been gulled. You know, you've got to realise you've been under attack for 60 years. Hardcore infiltration of your education system and your media to basically dumb you down and set you up for a takedown. So I don't really blame Americans. But, well, look, my country's the same. Every Western country's the same. The only reason the left has got where they are today is because good people haven't done enough for too long. That's really what it comes down to.
You mentioned Russia and China as our enemies, but not Islamists. How do they fit in, both domestically and overseas?
Well, you know how we talk about liberation theology and Christianity? Yeah. You know, the Marxists have got into Christianity and created a Marxist form of so-called Christianity. You've got to realise they've been doing that with Islam for even longer. For 60 years they've been infiltrating the Islamic seminaries. They have been controlling radical Islam from day one, folks. Ion Pachepa, the head of the Romanian KGB, wrote a great book recently called Disinformation. Great book. He talks about how he held a meeting with Andropov, the head of the Soviet KGB in the early 70s, how they were going to send 4,000 agents, communist agents, into the Islamic world and armed with anti-Semitic literature to stir up hatred against Israel and the United States. They used Islam as a battering ram. The same guy who explained about the Russian-Chinese strategy from taking down America, he also said to a friend of mine, he said, if you ever see Islamic terrorists set off an atomic weapon in America, don't believe it. It was us, it was the Russians. We just used that. We just used them. The number 2 man in Al-Qaeda was trained by the KGB. You know, Litvinenko, the KGB agent who died of thallium poisoning in London, he wrote about that in his book. He also wrote how the KGB deliberately blew up buildings in Moscow to blame it on the Chechens to make it look as though Moscow was opposed to the Muslims. And the greatest disinformation scam of the 20th century, or one of the biggest, is Vladimir Putin. He puts on a cross, he makes some anti-gay statements, he makes some anti-Muslim statements, and American Christians and conservatives practically wet their pants because they think, wow, he's going to save us from radical Islam. He's a secret Christian. We can rely on Mr. Putin. How delusional can you get, folks? Amen. Biggest scam of modern times.
You made a pretty good start on your hypothetical cabinet for the Cruz administration, but since you put Alan West in as VP, who's your defense secretary?
Yeah, look, I love him as defense, but I just think he'd be great. You know, Paul Vallely, Jerry Boykin, there's quite a few. Frank Gaffney would be another good one. I've got a few names for that, but I think the people should be looking at that because that's hugely important. Well, and in our website we've got every position named, everyone in the cabinet, but some with 2 or 3 options. You know, even right Supreme Court justices, Speaker of the House, right down the whole track.
What's your own perception of your influence on the American media?
Probably 0. Look, okay. If I talk about the American media, I'd talk about you guys, the Tea Party, Breitbart, etc. Yes, I've had influence. If you talk about the Soviet media that lives in your country, I'd say very little. But the real media, yeah, I've you know, Rush Limbaugh's quoted me. Glenn Beck said to me, he said, I only got interested in doing what I'm doing from reading your blog. You know, so, you know, I've had influence on Glenn Beck, I've had influence on a lot of them. But really, the influence I crave most is influence on people like yourselves. I'm like one of those women who used to go and sing to the troops in Korea. You know, basically, I can't remember what you called it, they used to go and sing and raise the morale of the troops. I'm here for the Tea Party. That's who I'm here for.
With Obama having circumvented Congress, how would you suggest an individual congressman, especially newly elected congressman, regain the ability to make laws, or better yet, eliminate laws and bureaucracies?
Well, there's a number of facets to that. The first thing, it really comes down to the support they get, because the only reason we have a Ted Cruz is because of the Tea Party of Texas, right? That's the reality. A whole bunch of these people are only in there because of the Tea Party. Mike Lee is only there because of the Tea Party. So really, it's a matter of you guys getting to the GOP and taking it over at the base. You know, and getting more David Bratts, getting more Trey Gowdies, more Jim Bridenstines to strengthen the base. Because you imagine if you had 6 more Ted Cruzes in the Senate and another 10 more Trey Gowdies and Jim Bridenstines in the House, you would flip it. The go-alongs to get along would go along with you. It's not very much. You don't have to get the whole lot of them. You just have to get a bigger faction to take it over. And so then they will be worth something. Then you can get rid of John Boehner. You can get rid of Mitch McConnell. And you can get actual people there who are going to fight and make the right laws. So you've got to take the House, you've got to take the Senate, and you've got to take the White House, and then you've got to start gutting the federal government so that rat nest, so that basically you get rid of the garbage heap that the rats can infest. You can't let it fester, you can't let it carry on. So really, I think the good guys are only going to be as strong as people like you let them be. And people like you who drive them. Look, you know, folks, that immigration bill would have passed the House this session had they not been so terrified of what the Tea Party did to Marco Rubio. That terrified them. Then they saw what they did to David to Eric Cantor, and they backed off. You are the power, people. You are the real power in this country. I just tell you a little example. Look, I think the Tea Party's a bit like baby Superman, right? You don't know your own strength. I went to the Institute for Policy Studies 50th anniversary bash last year in Washington, D.C. Hardcore Marxists, folks. They are the agenda, they are the drivers of the Obama administration, the ideas factory. I paid my $75. I put on my name badge and I mingled with the Marxists. Because I wanted to see what their agenda was, folks, what they were planning. And I sat through several sessions and I got bored stiff. Because they talked about one thing all day. Tea Party this, Tea Party that, Tea Party this. The Tea Party took the State House's office. The Tea Party stopped us there. How do we not see them coming? How do we let this happen? What are we going to do about it? Tea Party, Tea Party, Tea Party, Tea Party. They hardly even mentioned the Republicans, folks. It was boring. It was tedious. People, if you don't understand your own strength, your opponents do. They know you are the only thing standing between them and what they want.
All right, I've got a 2-word question here that speaks Hillary Clinton?
Look, I think Elizabeth Warren is going to be the nominee. I think they're going to shunt Hillary aside. But just think about Hillary. You know, did her thesis on Saul Alinsky, and then she interned in San Francisco. Not with a progressive law firm, not with a liberal law firm, but a communist law firm, Ted Truehalf's law firm. Ted Truehalf, Doris Bryn Walker, hardcore, card-carrying communists. And of all the law firms in the United States, that's where Hillary Clinton went. Bill Clinton, you know, hung around with the left at Oxford University, went to Czechoslovakia in 1970, stayed with a Czech communist family, and then went on to the Soviet Union. Do you think they would not have taken that advantage to try and recruit Bill Clinton? Do you think that they'd be that stupid? That's what I think of the Clintons, folks.
So I apologize, you may have answered this at one point when I was looking at my cards for the next question. Your list of people to be on the Dream Team for 2016, is that posted somewhere? Is that available?
Yeah, it's on my website. But if people want to take one of my cards, and I'll email it to them, and I'll circulate it around.
A couple of questions basically asking about voter fraud and what you think we're going to be up against there.
Well, voter fraud is huge, you know, it's all over the country. But you know, True the Vote does great work, but they're basically nipping at the heels of this. The only way, see, the last election was lost by 2 million votes, I think. With all the vote fraud and the scams going on, you still only lost by that. You know, you imagine if you had a Ted Cruz with a team, you could win by 10 or 15 points. Then, because that's what you need to make sure you beat the vote fraud, and then you have to start prosecuting it. Then you have to make it a serious offence and put people in jail and investigate the Democrats for it, and any Republicans for it too. We don't have vote fraud in New Zealand, folks. We don't have it because you have to pre-register several months before the election, and you have to turn up on the day with photo ID and get it ticked off. We don't even think of it. Vote fraud in America, what's going on? We cannot comprehend it. Neither can most of the Western world.
What's your response to people who suggest that the House tried to impeach Obama?
Look, it's not going to happen because you don't have the Senate. And I'll tell you something real straight. If it did happen, half of America's cities would burn the next day. Seriously. You have no understanding the riots you would have if you impeached Obama. And you have no understanding of what it would do to your public standing around the rest of the world. Most of the rest of the world said, oh yeah, racist America, they couldn't get rid of an election, so they did it this way. Look, he has done multiple impeachable defence, but A, it's not going to go through the Senate because the Democrats control it, and B, you would make a martyr, and so look, you've got to win this by elections. I'm sorry to say it, folks. You know, I've got respect for the law, but you've got to look at practicalities in this.
Actually, I'm going to make this one the last question here. How can we stop Agenda 21?
Well, look, that comes back to executive power again. You know, like, you can snipe around the edges of these things. And the Tea Party groups have done great work against Agenda 21 and Common Core all across this country. And you've won the battle against Common Core in many places. And that's great. But it's rats, folks. If you leave the compost, if you leave the trash pile there, the rats are going to come back. You have to get the United Nations off your soil, folks. Because that's driving us. To get rid of the Department of Education. Education has to be returned to the states and the communities and the churches and the school boards, local level homeschooling. That is the only way to stop this long term. But we have it in my country, folks. We call it unit standards. If you don't get rid of the trash pile that is the United Nations and the Department of Education, you're going to be fighting this battle forever until they win.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, well, can I just say, I see there's a few people lining up for my books, but I just want to say the only reason I'm in this country is because of people like you. I never saw your movement coming, and I'm so gratified to see it. So I'm honoured to be amongst you. I'm honoured to speak to you. Thanks for coming along tonight.